The best MMO differs from player to player. Every single MMO has that one dedicated player that swears by it, that would ardently defend it no matter how wrong they were, that would overlook all of its flaws. Even the day before had players like that would come into Mrs Stix's video to call her an unwarranted hater. I understand that everyone has different likes and dislikes and can appreciate every MMO for the unique experiences they provide us. With the end of 2023 upon us, I wanted to navigate the vast ocean of the genre in hopes of narrowing down the single, uncontested best MMO of 2023, and to achieve that, I wanted to rank the best MMOs in a number of different categories. Best tab target, best action, best story, world, PvP, etc. And in the end, tally each game based on a numerical point-based system with a clear, definitive winner. Before that, however, I wanted to leave you all with a question. What do you think is the best MMO of 2023? The single best MMO to play right now that you would recommend anyone play if they were looking for something new? Let me know down in the comments below. Now let's jump in. I think there are really only two MMOs that have truly outstanding tab target combat: World of Warcraft and Dark Age. I know I'll get some hate for saying this, but Final Fantasy XIV's combat just doesn't compare. World of Warcraft is arguably the most fluid tab target combat out of every MMO in the genre, and has set the golden standard for what new MMOs should aim for. We're not inhibited by large global cooldowns, it's fast, abilities don't take up the entire screen, classes are unique enough where everything feels different. Age followed very similarly: fast, fluid tab target combat, abilities felt impactful. There was a lot of class customization, which made for very unique class compositions, although many players ultimately ended up as meta slaves. Overall, I'd give WoW a 10 and Age an 8. I don't believe any other MMO really comes close in terms of tab target combat. There are 4 MMOs that comprise the action category: Black Desert Online, Blade and Soul, Dungeon Fighter Online, and Vindictus. Most people will argue that Black Desert Online is the best true action combat, and admittedly after Terra shut down on PC, that's very true. It's the smoothest action MMO you'll play, and has the most satisfying classes. It's also one of the best looking MMOs available even years after its release. Blade and Soul is a more CC heavy game than BDO, it's fast, and feels much more like a brawler than any other. I also wouldn't really classify it as a true action MMO since many abilities are gated behind requiring a target. Dungeon Fighter Online is a horizontal side-scroller. It has by far the fastest, most over-the-top combat of any MMO I've played, with the exception of MapleStory. Its sprite-based graphical style and screen-destroying special effects make it a visual spectacle that you really need to experience to truly understand. Vindictus is unfortunately a hub MMO, but it has some of the most fluid action combat you'll encounter. You can pick enemies up, you can toss them around, you can directly interact with environments, launch projectiles. It's unbelievably fun. Overall, I'd give Black Desert Online a 10, Blade and Soul a 7, Dungeon Fighter Online a 9, and Vindictus a 9. There are 4 MMOs that make up this category: Star Wars The Old Republic, Guild Wars 2, Final Fantasy XIV, and The Elder Scrolls Online. Star Wars The Old Republic is one of the most narrative-driven MMOs that I've ever seen. Your choices matter, your stories diverge, you can save or kill NPCs, your story is shaped by your own actions, and the entire story is voice acted. Guild Wars 2 is a much more Western RPG style of storytelling. It's segregated by chapters that are gated behind 10-level intervals, if memory serves. If not, I'm sure someone will be more than happy to correct me in the comments below. The story is fantastic. It has routes that can be altered depending on choices you make, and is also mostly voice acted. Final Fantasy XIV is a typical JRPG. It's filled with story, and it takes you on kind of a shonen adventure. It has a phenomenal story, if a little convoluted at times. No choice matters, there's no impact on story depending on decisions you make. Instead, you kind of just take a backseat to a narrative unfolding around you in a story that is voice acted. Sometimes. The Elder Scrolls Online is pretty much like any other Elder Scrolls game before it. There is a semblance of control, of choice. The main story is never really the most important part of the narrative. Rather, it's the stories that are told adjacent to the main story, in the zones that you play through, the NPCs that inhabit them. Overall, I'd give Star Wars The Old Republic a 10, Guild Wars 2 a 7, Final Fantasy XIV an 8, and The Elder Scrolls Online a 7. Before we delve any deeper into additional categories, I want to take a moment here to thank our incredible patrons over on Patreon for allowing me to do videos like this on MMOs every single week. You guys are phenomenal, and I cannot thank you all for your support. Now back to the video. I think this is going to be a bit of a controversial category because I believe most MMO worlds are empty and void of worth and substance, with the exceptions being World of Warcraft, Guild Wars 2, and The Elder Scrolls Online. World of Warcraft has enormous zones with little side quests far off the beaten path. Monsters, bosses, elites, rares, all dropping potentially unique gear, items, toys, transmog. There are mounts, factions. The world is absolutely filled with reasons to explore. Guild Wars 2 is very different in the sense that nothing is really hidden. Rather, everything is made publicly accessible and visible by looking at the map. Points of interest, vistas, hero points, world bosses, world events. There's so much going on in every zone that you'll always be on the move. The Elder Scrolls Online is very similar to WoW in so that you'll be wandering around and you'll just find this random dude yelling out for help, which will trigger a zone-wide quest chain. There are always little activities, little areas, and treasures to find while exploring. Overall, I'd give WoW a 10, Guild Wars 2 an 8, and The Elder Scrolls Online a 9. This is going to be a bit of a contentious opinion to have, but I don't think PvP is necessarily handled very well in MMOs. It's typically very boring, classes are horrendously balanced, and generally it's just not very fun. Except for in World of Warcraft and Black Desert Online. World of Warcraft has War Mode that allows you to engage any member of the opposing faction at any time, but also has a toggle option that lets you disable it if things get out of hand. It has various competitive modes, arenas, and battlegrounds. Since combat is as good as it is, the PvP is always very smooth, if a little too unforgiving if you're not playing meta comps. Black Desert Online is open world PvP with no toggle, meaning once you're of an appropriate level, you'll be potentially forced to fight for your life, for grinding spots, for monsters, bosses. It can become a gang fest very quickly, but it's oh so glorious. Overall, I'd give World of Warcraft a 10 and Black Desert Online an 8. I think there are really only two MMOs that can compete for the title of best PvE, World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV. World of Warcraft has the best dungeons. They're not linear, they allow for you to learn alternate paths to minimize your time spent within them. Mythic Plus dungeons are very fun with affixes increasing the challenge. Raids are difficult and unpredictable at times. There's a large emphasis on running older content for transmog, for mounts, and for toys. Final Fantasy XIV has incredibly difficult raids, Savage tier, Ultimate tier, arguably some of the longest, most drawn-out fights you'll find in an MMO, taking many groups months to learn. Alliance raids are also very fun, larger scale, easier content. There are trials, dungeons are gorgeous, but incredibly linear and boring. Overall, I'd give World of Warcraft a 10 and Final Fantasy XIV a 9. It's difficult to really rate MMOs based on their graphics because everyone enjoys different styles, therefore what I think looks good, others might not. Regardless, I think the best looking MMOs right now are Black Desert Online and Maple Story. Black Desert has the best character models. They're gorgeous, the best open world. You can't log into BDO and not see how aesthetically impressive this game is. Abilities are flawless, animations are beautiful. And then you have Maple Story, on the other hand, which has this unusual, timeless art style. Like, it's literally 2 decades old, and even in its early areas, it looks surprisingly good. These areas only improve as you progress through the game. Abilities are incredible looking, the combat looks great, everything about this game has only continued to get more vibrant as time has gone on. Overall, I'd give Black Desert Online a 10 and Maple Story a 9. There's really no contest here. World of Warcraft is currently the most popular MMORPG on the market, averaging millions of concurrent active subscriptions per month, several times that of Final Fantasy XIV, the second most popular, putting WoW at an immediate 10, and Final Fantasy XIV at roughly around a 5. Do note though, this does include every incarnation of WoW since they all utilize the same subscription. This is a tough one, as even the best truly free MMOs are very pay to win, but I'd say Lost Ark, Vindictus, RuneScape, and Albion Online are the 4 best free MMOs right now. Lost Ark is beautiful, has great combat, a decent story, fun PvE, decent PvP. For all intents and purposes, this is a perfectly acceptable MMO. Vindictus looks great, it has fantastic combat, arguably some of the best. Its story is horrible, however, but for people that just want to jump into a game and go out and kill some stuff, this could be your go-to. RuneScape and old school RuneScape are kings of providing you with a ton of stuff to keep you occupied. It doesn't look good aesthetically, but there's just so much to do that you'll often find yourself forgetting how old it looks. Albion Online is much the same as RuneScape, but where RuneScape has a focus on PvE, Albion Online has a focus on PvP, with large PvP zones. Overall, I'd give Lost Ark an 8, Vindictus a 7, RuneScape a 9, and Albion Online a 9. There are only 3 competitors here: World of Warcraft, Guild Wars 2, and Final Fantasy XIV. World of Warcraft has incredible PvP, a diverse selection of PvE, content spanning decades worth of expansions, a world with a purpose and narrative, despite how much of it has been retconned, great combat, and ever-expanding selection of classes and races. Truly a high-quality experience nobody should ever miss out on. Guild Wars 2 has good PvP, although it's a little too complex for your average player, myself included. Great PvE options, lots of open world options, a fantastic community, an incredible narrative, a deep hybrid combat system. Final Fantasy XIV is similar to WoW, except that it has horrible PvP, and it has a great story. Mostly. It has decent combat, infinite challenge in the form of raiding content, and cat girls. Overall, I'd give World of Warcraft a 10, Guild Wars 2 a 9, and Final Fantasy XIV a 10. But what is the best MMO overall based on every single category? Let's go ahead and tally the results. Coming in at number 5 is The Elder Scrolls Online with 16 total points. Number 4 is Guild Wars 2 with 26 total points. Number 3 is Black Desert Online with 28 total points. Number 2 is Final Fantasy XIV with 32 total points. And number 1 is World of Warcraft with 50 total points. But these are just my thoughts. I'm genuinely curious to hear yours.